Hello and welcome everyone. Today's webinar is based on the draft data protection bill, and we want to talk about how it's going to impact organizations and citizens, right? A bit about us at Saro. Saro and Saro Academy are both of our babies, right? Where we kind of have started a consulting practice and a academy practice, right? Academy we used to get people trained in privacy, get your career ahead in privacy, and Saro is where we kind of solve clients' problems in terms of a data protection, right? It can be privacy, it can be ISO 27001, right, and similar risk-based stuff, right? That we kind of try to solve for our clients. My name is Akash Singh, right? I'm co-founder and CEO at Saro and Saro Academy. I'm also a fellow in information privacy by IAPP, CIPT, CIPPE. I'm also part of some of the boards at IAPP. I also became the co-chair of Bangalore chapter, where I was before of IPP. My career is very focused, right? It's I have only been in privacy since I joined my past firm, and then I kind of started it on my own. So 4.5 years, something like that, I have been in privacy. GDPR was born, my career was born, and today we kind of have come here where we are able to discuss this, right? So you're in right hands. Over to Vaibhav for a short introduction.
Hi everyone, I'm Vaibhav. I'm founder and CEO of Privado. On privacy, I'm a CIPM certified privacy professional. My background is actually in product, where I saw GDPR compliance problem, and I started to think about, hey, as companies, it's super difficult to build tooling to solve these compliance issues. So you need SaaS solutions. Started Privado in 2020, originally for the Indian Data Protection Bill, which was in the parliament in December of 2019. But since then, we have done a lot of work on GDPR, and we have a leading product on the privacy by design front. About Privado, we are basically industry's first static code scanning tool for privacy. Essentially, what we do is we scan your source code to figure out, hey, what's the data that your product or application is processing? What are your data flows? And then we take that information to build maps automatically and do privacy by design and things like those. Yeah, so that's about Privado.
Yes, that's a perfect problem solver, right? It's the code scan. Automation is the key, right? So coming back to our agendas, right? So today we are going to discuss, I'm just going to inform you a bit about what we're going to discuss today. We're going to start with the overview a bit, then we talk about definitions, then we go to legal basis. Somebody already asked a bit about legal basis. Then we're going to talk about what are the requirements of the bill, how will it impact, right? And then what are the rights that the citizens have, right? So Vaibhav, right? Can you talk a bit about the key definitions of the data protection bill, right?
Yeah, sure. I think the interesting one, let's start with data principle, because that's an interesting angle taken by the Indian government. So yeah, so essentially data principle is nothing but like an individual whose data is being processed. So it's people like me, Akash, anyone, sharing their data with companies like Facebook, Google, or any B2C or B2B companies. So that's typically a data principle. In other laws like GDPR, they're called data subjects. And interestingly, there is an argument in India which was taken that, hey, data principle, we should not call them data subject, but principles, because they are the primary holder of the data. So yeah, that's the data principle, which is like an individual whose data is being processed. So that's like the first one. So whenever you hear data principle, think consumer, think individuals. Akash, you're on mute if you're saying something.
Thank you for pointing that out. How do you see a difference of terminologies between GDPR and the Indian law, Vaibhav?
Yeah, sure. So the two one right off the bat is, in GDPR you have data subject, versus India you have data principal. In GDPR you have data controller, versus India you have data fiduciary. And yeah, so the concept primarily, conceptually the definitions are same, terminology is the difference, because again, as I was reading and watching a podcast by Justice Sri Krishna, the logic which was taken by on the Indian side was, hey, the principal owner of the data is the individual, hence data principal, and you are sharing data with a company who's like a fiduciary. So it's this processing data on a basis of trust, and it's like same as you have insurance fiduciaries, you have these data fiduciaries who are processing data on the basis of trust. Whereas in GDPR, you have data subject and data controller who controls the processing of data, and data subject who owns the data. So that's terminology difference between India and GDPR.
Right. And how do you see? Okay, I think probably we're gonna do end to end on this one by one. Okay, guys, I have a question for you. right? Now is the time for you to kind of answer us. So you have to go to menti.com, right? Menti.com, and you have to type the code 42288474. You can just click here and start your answers. So basically, our question to you is, what data would be considered personal data under the bill? Obviously, the bill now covers even the non-personal data, but still a
Yeah.
question is, what do you think is personal data under the bill, right? Is it name, email address? Is it identification number? Is it location data? Or is it pseudonymized data, right? Uh, Even if the bill will have non-personal data, but bill will still have more provisions to personal data like sensitive data, right? So
Yeah.
we should expect that.
Hmm.
So guys, my question to all of you is, what would you consider personal data under the bill, right? Okay, pseudonymized data. Okay, that's a great answer. Maybe that is wrong. I didn't say that. So
Yeah, that's covered under the law, but yeah, we have to see if it's personal or not. That's the question.
yes, but I think pseudonymized data will definitely be covered as well. I was just playing around because obviously we're not talking about anonymization yet,
Yeah.
so we don't know. Okay, name, email address, identification number, location. Identification number is simple, right? It's Aadhaar. Let's
Aadhaar,
take, yeah,
passport number.
yeah. It's like Aadhaar. If it's Aadhaar, do you think that okay? So guys, I am still waiting for you, and I'm gonna start only after I see 100 here. So there are 60 people who have answered it. The easiest way to get there is to kind of click on the link, right, that I have given on the chat, and you'll automatically start getting the question, and you just have to choose one, right? So just click on the link in the chat. You will be in menti.com. The data is anonymized, so menti.com is not taking your data. It's a live voting that is happening, but still your personal data is not going. So believe me, privacy professionals, there's nothing to be scared here, right? We already have your data
Yeah.
and the bill is not out yet. So don't take tension.
And for people who have answered, what do you think about when you open an app? Typically, they will ask you rate the app inside it, like an NPS score. Do you think that is personal data?
That's such a great question, Vaibhav. Thanks for asking that. I want to answer that.
No, because these are, when you go and implement any of these
Mhm.
compliance to in a company, and then when you go to a product manager and say, hey, what personal data do you process? They'll say, we don't process any personal data. We just have user ratings and reviews, and a user ID. So that's not personal data. Personal data is name and email address. So yeah,
Right.
so when you when you start operationalizing this within your company, you will find these.
Yeah, I think once we kind of start operation, the problem changes, right? The
Yeah.
problem changes. The bigger problem kind of starts showing up because there's so much. The companies are so complex. We have 102 votes now, so I'm gonna move to the next slide, right? And I'm gonna ask you another question now. So okay, so this question is very important to understand before we start the webinar, right? The question is, would a company which is not in India, would this law apply to them? And what do you think? Even if you don't know, just try to answer it. Just click yes or no, guys, right? And let's see what is the market sentiment right now. And definitely, I'm going to write this. Okay, I don't think we're going to do 100 now.
I think it depends if the perfect lawyer answer that we can give to any
It
any question
depends.
related. Yeah.
It depends. Okay, I think that's the best answer I've ever heard. Right?
Yeah.
Does the bill apply to companies outside India? It depends.
Yeah.
Definitely, it depends.
As long as country process Indian citizen data.
Okay, I know we're touching 100, so I'm going to move on and I'm going to post a few more questions to Vaibhav now. Okay, so Vaibhav, I have a question for you. And this question was asked to me like, you were just discussing this.
Yeah,
So
sure.
what is legal basis of processing? And can you take a few examples from your implementation experience and tell us about a few legal basis of processing that you kind of help clients choose or something like that?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, so if you look at these privacy laws, what they ask you to do is, as a company, if you are, let's say, processing data, it has to be fair, reasonable, and legal. So the legal part is the legal basis. And just to take a step back and just imagine it, imagine like a e-commerce company. What are they technically doing? They are allowing users to register buy products, deliver products, right? And allow them to pay, etc. These are all individual data processing activities happening inside the company. Each one of them will have a legal basis in the law, that on what basis from the law can they process this data. That's essentially legal basis. So now just to take an example, let's say you sign up for a product and they start sending you marketing emails. Now, doing marketing to end users is a data processing activity, and you need to have a corresponding legal basis that, hey, on what basis can you process this data? And there are a couple of them. So just to explain, consent is the easiest one to explain. Like, so for example, consent is that, hey, I have allowed you to give me given you permission to send me marketing email. So the corresponding of that is these cookie banners that you see on website, in which they ask you, hey, can we drop cookies on our website, and then track you on analytics, etc. That's consent for you, right? Something, or another one which is popular is, in a user form you will see send me marketing emails, like a checkbox. That's a part of consent. So that's one of the legal bases where user is actually giving permission to process their data. Similarly, there are other legal bases in the law, in GDPR, in the Indian bill. So would take another one, which is let's say employment. So which is a specific one to India, wherein so the way the Indian law talks about legal basis, that most of the cases consent is the only legal basis, and there are some sort of exemptions. So employment is one of it. So in employment, let's say you have to recruit a person, then you will collect a lot of personal data for them, their past history, their interviews, etc. So you can't rely on consent, because let's say if there is a bad experience and the employee says no, then what happens? Where does that process go? So there are certain, you can rely on employment as a legal basis to process that data. So that's another sort of legal basis. I think one last legal basis that I would like to draw parallels is in Europe, actually, a lot of companies use legitimate interest as the key legal basis for a lot of things, including marketing or personalization, etc. And currently, the corresponding piece for that in India is other reasonable business purpose. The basic difference that I've seen so far, and we will learn a little more, is in Europe, companies can decide their legitimate interest and then say, we have done a balancing act. We have looked at end users, the harms processing can cause the end user, and then based on that, choose a legitimate interest. In India, it seems the direction we are going in the reasonable business purposes, it will be a list given by the government itself. So it'll be things like network security, mergers and acquisitions. There's a list which is already in the bill, and then there is that, the regulation can recommend others. So that's the difference. I think it's interesting difference between how, it's quite open in Europe versus I think it's restrictive on the Indian side.
Yeah. I think legitimate interest kind of, even if we take a small example of CCTV,
yeah,
right, and then you cannot take consent, or you cannot put it in employment contract always, because it's for your security, it's for a company security. So how do we kind of solve that problem? And also we kind of, I think also a legitimate interest kind of pops up when you kind of do an internal security of your laptops of the company, right? And you're using security softwares, antiviruses, right? Then how do we kind of secure our own environments? Because
of course,
you can't privacy.
Take consent from a threat actor, right? Because then you're already telling them, hey, this is something they're doing. So so legitimate interest takes care of that. Even in India, the other reasonable business purpose adds network security, mergers and acquisition. I think the difference, what I've seen is, in Europe, you can decide your own and do a legitimate interest balancing test. In India, it seems that government will come up with that list, which is also fine in a way, because if they can do high level purposes, then it should still
Vaibhav, we are talking about consent. So would you also like to kind of point us through consent manager? We have been reading about this again and again in Indian law.
Yeah. It's another interesting piece. I mean, you have it in CCPA as well in some sense, because they also allow representatives to do that. But the logic of consent manager itself is that it's a different data sort of fiduciary. Imagine it like a separate consumer app, which you will download, and with that you can manage consent of your data across all the companies, right? So you will have your data with some e-commerce, some music streaming, some Netflix of the world, and all of them. So you can essentially use one app to manage your data consent across all of these companies, and then the end company has to sort of agree to that consent or not agree to that consent. Basically, they have to oblige whatever you are seeing on that mobile app.
Right. I think that's a very important point and factor that will, over the time will become bigger, because similar to financial transactions, when UPI started, right, the number of transactions that happen in India are on the highest because the population is the highest. So indirectly, the personal data is the highest, right? So it's I think we are the people who will have the most number of fencing required because of the humongous nature of personal data in India.
And what's interesting, Akarsh, is the definition of consent is very specific. So that's going to be a big change line and say that by clicking or working you accept it. It has a very specific definition that it has to be. A couple of things that I wanted to point is it has to be affirmative. So someone has to say yes to it, and it can't be jumbled. So you can't have a sign up form and say, I'm consenting to signing up plus marketing has to be consented separately. That's another important piece. And another interesting piece on the transparency side is the notice needs to be multilingual, and that's as much as possible. So what I assume is if you have a mobile app or a website in English and Hindi, then a notice needs to be in English and Hindi is what the law asks you, right? And another interesting piece is ease of withdrawal of consent, which means if I give you consent from marketing by clicking on a checkbox today, the withdrawing of that consent should be as easy as clicking a checkbox. So that's another interesting piece, which is similar to GDPR, but yeah, a big change for Indian companies, of course.
Right. I think these are the things that are going to definitely change. But I can see still a lot of similarity with the European implementations, with the implementations in the US. So I think we get some guidance, right, from all these authorities that are already there, which kind of helps us sail through easily because we have something online, right? And especially I can see a lot of people who have joined us are actually privacy professionals. So I know they would be relating to our conversation. Okay, guys, I have one more question for you. Are there significant changes present in the bill when compared to the bill of 2018? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Everybody knows that personal has been removed. So.
So yeah, that's one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think another interesting question, which is in the Q&A, sort of what happens, and Akarsh would be interesting. I'll ask you this one. Is
Okay.
hey, companies like XYZ have collected a lot of data in 2014-15. Will PDPB handle that? I think this came around GDPR as well, but yeah, over to you. What do you think? Does it apply retrospectively, or what happens once the law comes in?
See, the moment you kind of process data, right, it starts applying to you, right?
Exactly.
and the moment and that moment is with everyone, right? Because when GDPR started, everybody started asking, hey boss, will this apply to me because I am doing marketing, right? But then when people started realizing that even if you are having an employee, you're processing an employee's data.
Yeah.
Right. So the moment you process an employee's data, so by inception of a company, right, it automatically starts applying. So you don't have to do anything. It applies to everyone and everyone in the subcontinent, right?
Yeah. So that's the interesting piece, that even if you have collected data, 4 years back, but the question that you need to ask is that data being processed today? If yes, then, on that data processing, essentially PDP bill will apply. Of course, you can't go back and give that user notice, but of course, moving forward, all new users will have to be given notice, and then your privacy policy will have to be updated based on the new law, etc. So yeah, even companies who have collected a lot of data, they will have to handle your write request, your deletion request, etc.
Yep, perfect. So we have 54 votes now, and 48 people think yes. And guys, I am with all of 48 people here, right?
Yes.
Can you choose a yes or a no, please? You just have to go to menti.com, right? And menti.com will unfold for yourself, right? If you cannot find the link, this is the link. I just posted in the chat box. Click on the link and choose your answer, right? Vaibhav, why don't you also do that? And I'll wait for you. Yeah. What do you think? Okay, we have.
My answer is, of course, yes. But yeah, let me go and do that from Mentimeter.
Okay. I know all the webinars that we have been doing since twice last time, people have been pinging me that, they could not attend. So that's why we kind of improved our internal systems, and now we are hitting 200. So I can see why we were kind of missing out on a lot of people in all. I'm really sorry, guys. I know a lot of people are here who are not able to complete our webinars in the last times. So thank you for trusting us and staying with us. Okay, so we have 100 votes. So after 100 votes, I would also like to answer it's yes. The things are changing, and even there was a huge difference between the 2018 and the 2019 version in terms of a bit of changes in terms of implementations. Because even when there's a small difference in the law, but still in terms of implementation for a company, for a corporate, it becomes a big difference, because look at a problem of consent and language, right? Because the moment you kind of start putting notices, then you need a translator, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of put in an extra person for the job who kind of solves your problems. So and one by one, problems keep increasing, right? I think private. I'll tell you a secret about privacy. A secret about privacy. So the more you know about privacy, the difficult it gets, right? And Vaibhav will say yes or no on this. Yeah, that's something that I've learned the hard way. The more I know about it, the difficulter it gets. So
Yeah.
data subject rights. Okay, I think let's kind of look at the elephant in the room. I think everything that we have been doing, everything that the government has been doing, it is for a data subject or a data principle, right? In the Indian context, right?
Yeah.
So when we talk about the data principle, right, what are the rights, right, that we are talking about, Vaibhav, right now in the Indian bill? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, interesting one. The first one is right to confirmation and access. It just means that you can actually go in a company and file this and say, hey, give me a confirmation if you are processing my data and give me a summary of what data is there. And then, it talks about the format in which that has to be done, etc., etc. So that's the first one. It becomes actually important because it also tells you the source of the data, where they actually got the data from, etc. So with that context, you can actually go after a couple of companies and try to figure out, hey, of how does this random company got my data, right? So who's sending you emails? And then of course there is something around right to correction, which is let's say if you have your data as part of and this becomes interesting. Let's say if you have data for people who have data as a part of let's say fintech ecosystem or lending ecosystem, in which some of the stale data is there, because of which they're not able to get loans, and generally the recourse might be slower. But you can then use right to correction to actually go and say that, hey, update my data, and then there is a provision for that. So that's also becomes important, and also becomes important when the decisions are being made based on your stale data, right? Yeah, so this is another one. Right to data portability basically means that you can port your data, and then it will be in an electronic format and then machine readable. So that's right to data portability. Right to forgotten is sort of complex. It's parallel is right to be deleted. It has a sort of education-led process, so we're still going to read it a little more, but yeah, it's not as straightforward as just in GDPR. But yeah, you can use this for, let's say, if there is a negative piece for you on Google and you want Google to remove that. And then we've seen a couple of cases like these on Delhi High Court, Kerala High Court as well, where they themselves acknowledge right to be forgotten as key part of privacy. So yeah, I think this piece, what I understand, is via an educator or some sort of educating officer, right to be forgotten. Yeah, but yeah, these are the laws. And that I think, Akash, if I'm correct, in the current law, they have not specified the timeline, but typically we have seen anywhere from 45 days to 60 days as a timeline. When a consumer puts in a request, then they have to sort of fulfill it. By fulfilling means you have to first verify the user that, hey, because I can actually spoof Akash and say, hey, give me my data. So first you have to verify it's actually Akash. And once that has happened, then from all the internal system, you have to either delete the data, or port the data, or give a summary within a certain time frame. So these are two things that you have to do. And things become interesting when you have legal obligation to sort of keep the data. So for example, let's say you have to keep employee data for 7 years, so you can't delete it. So part of it you have to delete, part of it you have to keep. So you have to ensure legal holds as well. So yeah, that's when these rights become complex when implementation come. But yeah, for end consumers, I think it's a really win-win situation, especially given how many spams we get, especially given how many calls we get. You can actually go back to them and say, here, stop processing my data, and they will have to do that, else they will get fined.
Yep, and I think that is something that was very important to do, because I know everybody is getting a bank offer to take a loan, right?
Yeah.
And you don't want that offer, right? Even I don't want that credit card, believe me.
By the way, I just got a call while we were on the webinar. Of course, Truecaller helped me detect it, but yeah, that's the situation we are in.
Yeah, there are too many of them. You're in a meeting, you're in a call, you don't want that calls, you have enabled DND, but you still can't help it, right? So yeah, and we have high hopes from the law, because as India, everybody has our personal data.
Yeah, and so Suraj has an interesting question, saying how do we, aware people about this, or how would people get to know about it, etc.
I would say Saro Academy.
Yeah, and Akash, on the end user, I look at it a lot like RTI, right? So when RTI came, people thought, who will file an RTI? I think this is like much easier than filing an RTI. So there will be a lot more people who will be doing it. And yeah, and I think even or you could look at like online consumer redressal forums where people actually go and complain against e-commerce companies fairly regularly. So I think Indian consumers would be doing that a lot. And it's about, once that starts becoming popular, coming in media that, hey, this happened, etc., then people will jump on it, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I have a great question for all of you. Somebody has asked, will this, and this is a very important question. I understand all of you. There is a reason why we are under pressure from the global market with the Indian Privacy Bill. The
Yeah.
pressure is that we need an adequacy decision to be able to do business in Europe, right, as a country. And I won't say against it, and I won't say that no, this bill is because of that pressure. And adequacy decision is important, and we are all keeping our fingers crossed that
Yeah.
once this bill passes, we get that adequacy decision.
Yeah, I think it'll be a win-win for the Indian SaaS, which is growing like, weeds. It's like both Indian SaaS and IT industries. I think if but this bill can help us get adequacy, then it'll basically help us a lot. A lot of this documentation of SSCs will go away.
Yeah. I think probably over the period of time, if we don't get an adequacy decision, then there's a lot of business that we are bound to lose because of the transfer impact assessment that has started happening.
Yeah.
And the new SCCs have been launched by EU. Uh, if we don't have an adequacy, I think over the period of time we are on a road that is not going in the right direction. Believe me, right? And this is happening with all my clients. So yeah, let's be aware and let's hope that we get an adequacy decision rather than put it like that. So coming on to obligations, right? Coming on to obligations and talking about a few of obligations, Vaibhav, right? And
Yeah.
I know you have been in and out of product implementation, and I know product people are the guys who kind of get the wrong questions all the time, saying, "What do we have to do? How is the product going to help us?" Right? Consent कैसे लगेगा, right? And everything, that question that comes to you, I want to understand a few of the obligations that you see when you're solving a product problem, or let's say you're solving a GDPR problem for a client. And let's kind of put it in an Indian context now, because you're talking about the Indian Privacy Bill, but obviously in terms of principles and obligations, there are a huge similarity. So why don't you kind of help us out there? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So I think principles, a lot of these principles across GDPR or even OECD, they are the same. So yeah, so we'll start with a couple of interesting ones that as product people, we don't think about, but become super important after this. I think the first one is this sort of collection limitation or data minimization, as they like to call it. So the question really is that you can only process or you can only collect the data which is absolutely necessary for the purpose of processing. So if I have to explain, so for example, if you have a user form for registration, you should only collect the data which is needed for that registration. Now, now it's up to the company to decide it and make that judgment call, but do you need the address of the user for registration? No, you need the address for delivering the order. So you can actually take it much later, right? So you don't need to take it at the time of registration. So that's one example of collection limitation, wherein rather than taking address upfront, you're delaying that, right? Another is date of birth. Do you need date of birth for a user registration? Not really, right? So, or do you need Aadhaar numbers? Not really, right? Unless it's KYC. If it's KYC, then you need it. There is a legal ask for you, right? So, collection limitation is nothing but you need to collect only that much data which is absolutely necessary for the purpose of processing. And yeah, that's up to the company to decide. But that's always a tough one because yeah, that's a debate between legal and product, and they have to always keep discussing about it. Another interesting one that I always see is data storage limitation, because what that part asks you to do is delete the data when the purpose of processing ends. Now that's sort of the one which is always neglected. So data always sits in your stores, never get deleted. So, but this is ask is whenever the purpose gets finished, then you have to delete it. So, and what could that be? So let's say if it's marketing, and if you have a user who has not come to your product for, let's say, 6 years, do you start deleting their data? Is there, maybe 7 years of inactivity? Should then you delete the data for marketing at least? So that's how you have to think, hey, when does my marketing purpose end? If I have an inactive user, how will I market to that user, right? So and in inactivity, you can define if a user has not opened any of your marketing communication for, let's say, 2 years. So that's obviously that purpose is no longer available. So you need to now delete data from your marketing CRMs, right? So that's your data storage limitation, things like those, right?
But I really like hearing it from the implementers, right? Because I know there's a lot of text in the law, but I think on ground implementation kind of becomes very difficult, right?
Yeah.
And the moment we kind of sit together and we kind of start solving that problem, right, it kind of becomes very interesting because you look at a lawful basis, you look at where data is going to go to, right? Where are we transferring the data? Is it going outside India now, right? Like GDPR, was it going outside Europe? So, and then I think the beautiful part of the law is also the copy that you have to maintain in India.
Yeah, Article 28.
Yeah,
ROFA
but
report.
also the beautiful thing is we already have RBI regulation on fintech. So we again have experience, right?
Data
So we
localization.
again have
Yeah.
experience. So we have
Yeah,
experience. Yeah.
Yeah, I think RBI jumped the gun in 2018 with the
Yeah.
because localization was introduced in the 2018 report and then RBI quickly did. I think other interesting pieces which a lot of people can relate to these Chinese apps of loans, wherein you would hear the case of they would take your contact data and start contacting your friends in case you default on a loan. So that basically is if you look at the principles, it's basically not fair and reasonable processing at all. So that's one. There is no transparency because to the end user, it was never told that your contact data will be used to, in case of a default, they will contact your friends. So yeah, so all these Chinese apps which came in and sort of violated end users' privacy will violate a lot of these principles, be it fair and reasonable processing, be it transparency, in some cases consent, so no lawful processing as well. So I think we need that Indian bill, this Indian data protection bill to safeguard against these harms.
Yeah, and I believe me, I love talking about these Chinese apps, Vaibhav. Thanks for pointing them out.
Yeah, and there is, I think someone did like how many permissions these Android apps are taking. So yeah, I see that a lot of them will go down because with each one of them you need to then either you have
Yeah,
a
but I think I would like to add on to everyone here also. So I think if you kind of look at like 3 to 4 years back, as Vaibhav kindly pointed out, saying we take those permissions, right? The Android app today asks you whether you want to give that data or not, you want to allow that location or not, right? And this is a beautiful example of what? Privacy by design, right?
yeah.
And privacy by design, there is a direct implementation of privacy by design in front of you. Look at the data subject right and the right that you're getting.
Yeah.
And this will kind of keep getting increasing. So I'll again, I just want to point one more thing out. So if you look at a companies like Airbnb, Facebook, right? They have beautifully made their privacy policies location wise, right? So every
Yeah.
location has a different set of rules. Europe has a different set of rules. So if you think you're giving a data to an international organization, which is big and mature, they are the same. Maybe the smaller ones are okay because they're going to treat your data equally and they're going to, so the moment you kind of store data in Europe, then they kind of are bound to kind of follow GDPR for you also, right? To kind of give you the equal respect and rights. But the moment the data center is in India, it's, believe me, they treat it like any other Indian company.
Yeah, the IT Act starts applying. So yeah, of course.
Yeah, I have a question for all of you again, and this question is important because I know all of you here are somehow privacy professionals or want to become a privacy professional. So what do you think an organization can do to prepare to comply with the bill? Do a privacy assessment, understand the data flows, or understand and classify the data? Or which one would you prioritize first? Let's say, all right. Okay, two people have started with understand and classify data. So data classification. Well, that is a fair enough point. Understand data flows. Readiness assessment. Okay. Okay.
All of the above. There is one. You have found yours there.
We have deliberately not put all of the above. So yeah, classification should be the first step. Guys, I'm gonna put the link again for you, people who have missed it. So you just have to click on this and just choose whatever you want to choose. If you want to choose, let's say, classification, yes. Readiness assessment, yes. Okay, we have 79 people, right? More than 69 people, obviously, going towards 100 now. And we will touch 100 soon. Yeah, it's 91, 92. Yeah, okay. Let's get 100 and then we'll answer you. Okay, so my answer is all of the above. Vaibhav, what is your answer? What did you choose?
Yeah, I think it's all of the above. yeah, overall, I like to start by data mapping. I think that's the sort of like foundation, or हिंदी में बोलते हैं ना, building बना रहे तो नींव. So it's like your name of your privacy programs. It's like a foundation of your
So
privacy
Vavo, I
program.
have one more question for you. So would you do a privacy readiness assessment first, or would you go with a data mapping first?
No, I think privacy readiness assessment makes sense because, and I'll tell you why it makes sense, because it gives you like an overall today's state before you start investing resources, and you take that and go to your board and say, hey, from an Indian privacy bill perspective, we are red in 50 and yellow in 10 and green in 5, and our goal is to become whatever 20, take this 50 and become 10,
Green in
right? So,
100%.
yeah, exactly, right? So so yeah, of course that never happens, but I think privacy readiness is also a lot about managing upwards and managing and getting budgets, etc., right? And then of course, before a lot of those reds will depend on the data mapping, in my opinion.
Exactly, because data
Until,
mapping will also take a lot of effort, right?
yeah, it
Yeah,
takes a lot of time.
it takes forever for companies which are, which are like Reliance Jio, right? There will be like no end to it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
They have so much data, and there are so many organizations. Like if let's take example of e-commerce company that we use, maybe Snapdeal, Flipkart, right? They have once the data goes in service one, then it kind of keeps going to all the services, right?
yeah.
And it keeps moving around, and then at the end you get your order, right?
Yeah,
So yeah,
and and then the thing is, like with technology, because they're always optimizing and launching new features, that there are always new services, old services get deprecated, new services, new features, more data is consumed by the existing services. So yeah, so that's a ever evolving problem. It's not, done once, and that's another mindset difference with people. It's not like, it privacy can never be on autopilot, in my opinion. It has to be constantly looked at. It's a continuous process. You have to keep working on it.
well, I would actually like to thank a lot of people in the chat to keep answering with us, and also pointing us out with their difference of thoughts, right? And
Exactly.
I really appreciate people who kind of answer this, right? Uh, and I know that everyone's approach is different, and it kind of also becomes different with different type of organizations, because if let's say an organization is compliant in EU and wants to comply in India, then
Yeah.
the process is different, right? Because we already have a lot of infrastructure, because we have a privacy policy and we have to tweak that privacy policy. But if there's an Indian company which doesn't have a policy, and I'm not talking about external privacy policy, please don't find me wrong, I'm talking about the internal privacy policy, right? Which is the beautiful policy, right? Which takes a lot of effort to implement. So I'm talking about that right now, and then it kind of makes a lot of sense to take one of the steps which makes more sense for your business. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so Vaibhav, would you like to kind of take that 5 minutes and kind of also help us out with a tool, right? And I know people can get like 2-3 minutes of,
Yeah.
yeah. Would you like to share your screen, Vaibhav?
Sure. Just allow me to do that, and I
Yes,
will quickly do that. Yes. Let me know if you can see the screen and my dashboard.
I can see the dashboard, Vaibhav.
Awesome. So yeah, so the use case that I'm going to talk about today is data mapping. That's something that you will, as you'll start implementing the Indian bill, you will sort of start struggling into, or start getting into. So what we essentially do is, we basically, rather than asking engineers and product managers, hey, what data do you process? What are your data flows? We essentially just scan the source code of all these products, internal services, applications, to give you that information on day one. So I have a couple of these scans already done. So some for mobile app, website, some for internal services. I'm going to take example of only one such application, which is a mobile app. So imagine it could be for any fintech or any e-commerce app. And I'm just going to show you what we find automatically and what are the information that you can put in to finish your ROPA reports, etc. Right? So this mobile app, it's an e-commerce mobile app. It's processing 9 data elements. Does not have any third-party integration yet, and has one permission, which is the location permission that this app is taking, right? So we can quickly look at the results. So 9 data elements. So processing cookies, phone numbers, user ratings, profile pictures, email address, etc. And we can also quickly look at the results. So if you can see the screen, you can see the highlighted part. That's where this profile picture is being processed. So conceptually, of course, the idea is that we can scan the code and give you the initial data mapping automatically done. And then you can go ahead and then, sort of start adding information like, hey, what is the purpose of processing? What are our role? What is the retention schedule? And then that gives you something called a RUPA report, or Article 28 in the Indian bill, that can be downloaded from our dashboard. You can also see it live under our reporting section. It has details of a DPO, company details, etc. Yeah. So on a very high level, this is sort of what we do. from a privacy perspective, once you run the scan, you don't have to actually ask engineers on what they're doing. You already know everything, and then it's about prioritizing, hey, my biggest risk application or internal services is this one, because it has a lot of third parties like the ones that I'm showing you here. So let's focus on this one first and then go to the low risk one later. So yeah, so this basically cuts down your time. So I've done a manual data mapping exercise with a large e-commerce company in the past. Took me 9 months. And with this, you can actually do it in a month. So that's the advantage that you get. And one last thing, another thing that we do is a challenge that you will see is that with all these technology products, these keep changing. So new code changes will keep happening. So what we do is we monitor that and create an alert. That, for example, in this mobile app, there is a new data element, which is device ID, which is being added. So we created an alert for privacy. So we monitor that and drive the use case of privacy by design. So proactively, you can actually remediate all these things before they go live. So your reports are always up to date. You are obliging with the with privacy by design. So all your use cases are then taken care of. Over to you, Akash.
Yes. Somebody's asking like when is Saro expanding to EU? So I was just
Saro is
answering them.
already in EU.
Yeah, we started. I think one of the first offices that we had was not India, but in Amsterdam. So yeah, that's where we do kind of most of our work for compliance and GDPR, and that's where we kind of learned a lot of stuff, right? Where how do we implement and stuff. So I'm just looking at scrolling down all the questions. But if you have any questions, now is the moment, right, to kind of get them answered, right? Okay, I can see privacy by design. Okay, that's a beautiful question, Suryakant. Vaibhav, this question is for you. How privacy by design can help our organization, and also how difficult it is to implement? I think that also. Why don't you answer that also? Yeah.
Sure. So privacy by design conceptually is nothing. It's basically saying that right from the design stage, you will uh, take care of all the privacy requirements, be it from a user perspective or from the law perspective. And what actually privacy by design helps organization is do a couple of things: avoid fines, that's one, but also build trust in the user's journey, because they can actually see that you've thought about privacy before launching a feature, and it avoids a lot of bad headlines. So I think that's what privacy by design is about. What's the difficult part about privacy by design, I think, is that privacy by design, in my opinion, initially came about when there was waterfall development. So wherein there were defined stages of requirement phase, a design stage, so on and so forth. But actually today engineering is continuous software delivery, agile, right? So every daily you are pushing code changes. So you can't really separate these stages out. So you need more automated tools to actually find new changes which are impacting privacy and remediating them, right? So yeah, privacy by design is a lot about that. There are multiple ways to do it, but yeah, briefly, I would say the biggest advantage is it helps you build trust with your customer and avoid fines, of course.
Yep. I think that's. I think one more question about localization for you, Vaibhav.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. What's the question? I have some notes. I'm just opening up for the localization bit.
Yeah. So will there be a need for what is the localization rule for MNC? That is a question.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Basically, I think personal data does not have any localization requirement in India, but sensitive personal data and critical personal data has. So sensitive personal data is defined in the law. Imagine it as health data, sort of religious belief, sexual orientation, things like those, financial data. So that has a mirroring concept. So a copy of that has to be maintained in India. Critical personal data can't move out of India. So that's another, I mean, unless there are some cases, but yeah, we don't know what critical personal data is yet because it's not defined, but that's sort of the, even for MNCs, they will have to mirror that data back. So imagine, let's say if that data is going to US, they will have to get a copy back in India.
Yeah, perfect. So guys, there's a short link that I'm putting it here. I know there are a lot of questions and chats, but there's a small link that I'm putting here. And this is something that you can use for a lot of things, right? It's our upcoming survey, our PDPP report, our next webinar. You want that PPT that we are just running through, you can just download it through one click, right? So you can just use this minute to kind of use all the resources that we have, right? And obviously we are going to questions. Okay.
So should I take this ROPA one, because that's something I've lived, and I think Akash, you have lived for a long time, that how to maintain ROPAs and what's the business value of it. So I'll take the business value first, and then how to maintain is I'll leave up to you maybe. But yeah, so the business value of Rupa is essentially that's the record of, as a company, high level summary of what data processing you are doing. Unless you don't know what data processing is happening, how can you make sure that that does not have any privacy risk, is not violating any law, right? So it's, if you don't know anything, you can't make it compliant. So that's the business value of Rupa. You need to know on a high level what are your data processing activity, and then each one of them have to be compliant. That's the business value of Rupa. The end user might not see the value, maybe like a marketing person, but from privacy perspective, if you don't have a Rupa, that's a fine. And then usually if you don't have a Rupa, you will not have a contract with a third party vendor. There will be a data transfer, you will not be aware of that, and then you will get fined from Europe or India, or things like those. So that's the business value for privacy. For the end marketing person who's actually building that up or giving you that information, yeah, that needs, I think then that needs Zaro Academy in to even train marketing people, because that's also a ask, I think, in the
Thanks for helping us sell, Vaibhav. So yeah, if you want to learn about Rupa, get a certification. But yeah, I'm just laughing it on. But yeah, that's something that you can do, by the way. Meanwhile, we are also coming up with another partnership with PECB. So all your certifications, ISO 27701 and stuff, it will all be there in Zaro Academy. But yeah, if you want to download all the resources, this is the moment to kind of download. I have put it in chat. You just have to do a click. You can join our WhatsApp group. You can join the community. A lot of things, right? It's Zaro.com resources is something that you have as well. And Vidhi Sachdev had a great question for Vaibhav again, which says, if there are 10 languages in India, right? How do we take consent with 10 languages in India? Yeah.
So I think the expectation in the law is, and I've also read it very briefly, is multilingual as much as possible, which means that, and that's how my read is. I'm not a lawyer, but my read is that if your website is in, and that's even in Europe, if your website is in Hindi, then you should have a consent in Hindi, right? But if your website is only in English, then expecting you to have a privacy policy in Hindi and consent box in Hindi does not make sense, because if a user is able to purchase product on your website in English, then he should be able to, I mean, that's my thinking, he or she must be able to even give
Right,
consent.
Vaibhav. And Vaibhav, I'll tell you something very interesting now, since you've added this, and I have been reading a lot about. So my work mostly is to analyze the fines that are coming out in Europe. And so Dutch DPA fined TikTok, right? Because their privacy
Yeah.
policy was just in English and not in Dutch. And they got fined. So I think there's a huge difference with the Indian context, because there are so many languages. So how does a company kind of comply with all of them? Maybe Indian government is going to launch a Google Translate as well. No comments after that. But let's see how that works.
Yeah, I think since it's like as much as possible, then it's open to interpretation, in my opinion. It's not.
Yeah, I think that's something that is. Will there be a need for dedicated DPO for Indian? Believe me, guys.
Yeah.
The less I want to think about a privacy professional in a company, the more I do consulting. More is the need of somebody also from the perspective of the person's company, right? If company X is coming out to us, there's a huge need of people in data privacy. And I was just looking at one of the surveys that we did. At least 3 lakh people will be needed in next 1-2 years, right? In India, in privacy, once that law kind of is about to finalize, because how else will we kind of manage so much data compliance, right? Even if we do automation, even if we do everything, we still need at least 3 lakh people, right, to kind of come to help comply. And the journey starts now, right, for all of us, right? Because the moment it kind of takes 3 years, even 3 years, it still be less time to kind of know the law, to kind of help implement the law. Right, how many companies are there in India? So
Yeah, and Akash, for significant data fiduciary, which we did not touch upon, DPO is a mandatory role. It has to be mandatory. It's not optional. A data protection officer is mandatory.
Would you also like to take up what is a significant data fiduciary, Vaibhav? Just quickly.
Yeah, sure. So data fiduciary, of course, is a company which is processing data and deciding why they are processing the data and for what purpose. So whenever you hear data fiduciary, mostly think of consumer companies or even SaaS companies when they're doing marketing, like Akash is doing right now. Significant data fiduciary is a subset of data fiduciary, which is, it's not yet clearly defined, but it basically is going to be defined on the basis of how much data they're processing, what is the kind of data they're processing. So imagine significant data fiduciary is someone who could have more threats from a privacy perspective, because either they're super large, so they're processing maybe data of millions of users, or they're processing sensitive data, so maybe they're processing health data rather than like normal e-commerce data. So significant data fiduciary is a class. Again, it will get defined once the DPA, the regulator comes in, etc. The authority becomes authority. Yeah.
Yeah. And guys, I have dropped in Vaibhav's LinkedIn. You can connect with him. And I know he always responds very quickly on LinkedIn.
Yep.
So if you have any questions about the product, about privacy, Vaibhav is the guy to answer you. If you want to obviously reach out to me, I know everybody here knows that I always reply as well. So my LinkedIn is here as well. And yeah, thank you for joining the call. And I know that I hope the session was meaningful to you. I hope the session helped you get some information that we could have done. I know it's only 1 hour and the problems will not solve in 1 hour, but still thanks a ton for joining this call. And yep, thank you guys. Yeah.
Thanks everyone.
Thank
It
you
was
guys.
fun.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for joining it. Yeah. It means a lot for us. Yeah.